There are stories written in words, and then there are stories told in silence. The kind that lingers in a glance, trembles in a breath, and echoes long after the moment has passed. For Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, silence was not emptiness. It was a language, a symphony of unspoken emotions that whispered louder than 1,000 confessions. It began, not on a stage or in front of cameras, but behind the curtains of an endless rehearsal. The world saw them as two stars from different constellations, shining in their own directions. Yet fate had a strange way of bending light, and when it brought them together, something changed, something the audience could feel but could never quite define. The studio lights dimmed as the director called for another take. The scene was simple: two men facing each other under the quiet drizzle of fake rain. Xiao Zhan's eyes, soft yet steady, met Wang Yibo's, unreadable, guarded, but shimmering with something raw. The air between them was heavy, charged with invisible electricity. "Action," the director whispered. And then silence. No dialogue. Just the sound of rain hitting the ground, and two hearts trying not to speak what they felt. Xiao Zhan stepped closer, his breath forming mist in the cold air. Wang Yibo's jaw tightened, his usual composure faltering for the briefest second. The script said nothing, yet the story screamed everything. When the director finally said, "Cut," the crew exhaled as if they had been holding their breath the whole time. Even the camera operator paused, staring at the monitor in disbelief. "Did you see that?" someone whispered. Yes, everyone did. But what no one saw were the moments after the cameras stopped. The quiet gestures that belonged to no script, no audience. The way Wang Yibo would glance at Xiao Zhan from across the set when he thought no one was watching. The way Xiao Zhan would smile, just barely, as if answering a question never asked aloud. In those quiet corners of the studio, their connection grew like a secret song, unheard but deeply felt. One night, long after the crew had packed up, Xiao Zhan stayed behind, running through lines he already knew by heart. The empty set echoed with the sound of his footsteps. Then he heard it, the soft hum of an engine outside. Wang Yibo's motorbike. "You're still here." Yibo's voice broke the silence, low and hesitant. Xiao Zhan looked up, smiling faintly. "Couldn't sleep." Neither could Yibo. They didn't speak for a while after that. They didn't need to. Wang Yibo sat on the edge of the stage, the faint hum of the lights above them the only sound. Xiao Zhan leaned against a prop wall, watching him. There was something profoundly comforting in the quiet between them, a kind of peace that words might have ruined. Sometimes silence is where truth hides. Days turned into weeks, and the world outside began to buzz with rumors, interviews, and endless noise. Yet, amidst the chaos, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo carried a secret serenity, a connection untouched by gossip, guarded by the kind of understanding that didn't need to be explained. Then came the award night, the glittering ceremony, the flashing cameras, the endless applause. Both of them stood on stage, side by side, under the piercing glare of spotlights. The host asked a question about teamwork, and Xiao Zhan answered first, his voice calm, his words gracious. When it was Wang Yibo's turn, he paused, just for a second too long before saying softly, "Sometimes silence says more." The crowd laughed, thinking it was his usual stoic charm. But Xiao Zhan understood. His eyes met Yibo's, and in that brief exchange, an entire conversation passed between them. Later at the after-party, music blared and laughter filled the air. Yet, in the middle of all that noise, the two found themselves on the balcony, alone again. "Everyone's talking about us," Xiao Zhan said, gazing at the glittering city below. Wang Yibo chuckled quietly. "Let them talk. They don't hear what we don't say." Xiao Zhan turned, the faint moonlight catching in his eyes. "You think silence can really speak for love?" Wang Yibo didn't answer right away. He stepped closer until the space between them vanished like mist. His gaze was steady, searching. "It already does," he whispered. That night, neither of them needed to say another word. Months later, when they met again for a new project, the energy was different, deeper, more knowing. They could anticipate each other's movements, complete each other's emotional rhythm without rehearsal. The director often marveled. It's like they read each other's minds. In truth, it wasn't mind reading. It was heart listening. There was one particular scene, one that fans would later call the silence that broke the internet. No music, no dialogue, no dramatic effects. Just Xiao Zhan standing in a dimly lit hallway waiting. Wang Yibo approached from the other end. His expression unreadable, every step echoing like a heartbeat. The camera zoomed in, their eyes met. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, the faintest curve of a smile on Yibo's lips. Xiao Zhan blinked, almost imperceptibly, as if holding back tears. The screen faded to black. When the scene aired, social media exploded. Fans wrote essays analyzing every glance, every breath. Some said it was acting. Others swore it was something more. But those who truly watched with their hearts knew. Silence had spoken again. Off camera, things were quieter still. Fame grew louder, schedules busier. Yet their bond never faded. Sometimes, during interviews, one would mention the other. Briefly, warmly. And the other's fans would immediately catch the subtle fondness behind the tone. Years passed, and the world kept spinning, but certain moments remained timeless. Like that night under the studio lights, like that balcony conversation, like every silent look that said more than any script ever could. And maybe that's what made their story so extraordinary. Not because it was loud, but because it wasn't. Because in a world obsessed with noise, they found beauty in the hush between words. Because love, the truest kind, doesn't always need to be declared. Sometimes it just needs to be felt, quietly, fiercely, endlessly. In the end, when silence spoke louder for love, wasn't just a story about two stars who shared the screen. It was about connection, about the invisible thread that binds souls even when the world demands noise. It was about the way Xiao Zhan's laughter softened Wang Yibo's stillness. The way Wang Yibo's calm steadied Xiao Zhan's fire. The way two opposites found harmony not in words, but in the spaces between them. Because sometimes the loudest love stories are the ones never spoken aloud. So when the cameras fade, the applause dies, and the world moves on, their silence remains, echoing softly in the hearts of those who watched and understood. There are moments in life when sound becomes unnecessary, when the heart begins to speak in ways the tongue never could. That was the language Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo came to understand, not through confessions or promises, but through the quiet spaces between their breaths. After that night on the balcony, something unspoken shifted between them. They returned to set the next day like nothing had happened, but the air was heavier, sweeter, alive with the tension of something unnamed. Their eyes met during a break, and though surrounded by crew and chaos, it felt as if the world had fallen completely silent. The director was setting up a new emotional scene, one where the two characters were meant to part ways. It was a scene of heartbreak, of words left unsaid. But what unfolded before the camera went far beyond the script. As the take began, Xiao Zhan's character was supposed to walk away. Yet, when his eyes met Wang Yibo's, his steps faltered. The silence grew unbearable, thick with feeling. Yibo's lips parted slightly as though to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, his gaze softened, trembled. The kind of look that carries every emotion a man refuses to say aloud. The director didn't dare cut. A single tear slipped down Xiao Zhan's cheek, unscripted and raw. He didn't blink. He didn't hide it. Wang Yibo's expression shattered for a moment, his calm facade crumbling like glass. And then, just before Xiao Zhan turned away, Yibo reached out, his fingers brushing against Xiao Zhan's sleeve. That single touch said everything. When the director finally called, "Cut!" the entire room fell into stunned silence. No one clapped, no one spoke. Even the sound engineer stood frozen. It wasn't acting anymore. It was truth captured by accident, emotion made visible through silence. Later, Xiao Zhan sat alone in his dressing room, staring at his reflection. He didn't understand why that scene had felt so real. Why his chest had tightened the way it did. A knock came on the door. Wang Yibo stepped in quietly. "You okay?" Xiao Zhan nodded, smiling faintly. I should be asking you that. Yibo leaned against the doorframe, eyes flickering down for a moment. You didn't walk away, he said softly. You didn't let me, Xiao Zhan replied, voice low. For a long moment they said nothing. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was powerful, grounding. Like two souls that didn't need to fill the air to be understood. As weeks passed, the project drew closer to completion, but the moments between takes became their own secret story. A quiet smile shared before a scene. A glance that lingered a little too long. A laugh muffled into the crook of an elbow when they locked eyes and forgot the world for a second. Sometimes the crew would tease them. You two don't even need dialogue anymore. But even the jokes carried a ring of truth. They didn't. One evening, during a late shoot, a storm rolled over the city. The crew decided to pause filming until the rain stopped. Everyone scattered for warmth and food. But Xiao Zhan and Yibo stayed behind in the half-lit studio, surrounded by the rhythmic tapping of raindrops on the roof. Yibo sat on the floor, legs crossed, his jacket draped over his knees. Xiao Zhan walked over and handed him a thermos of hot tea. Thanks, Yibo murmured. You look like you're about to fall asleep, Xiao Zhan teased gently. Yibo smiled, eyes glinting with mischief. Maybe I will. You'll stay and wake me up. That question hung in the air, heavier than either of them expected. Xiao Zhan didn't answer. He simply sat beside him, their shoulders barely touching, the warmth between them faint but steady. For minutes, maybe hours, they listened to the rain, their thoughts unspoken but aligned. Yibo closed his eyes, his breathing slowing. Xiao Zhan turned slightly, watching him. In that quiet moment, under the hum of distant thunder, it felt like the universe had paused just for them. When Yibo finally opened his eyes again, Xiao Zhan was still there, watching, waiting. Still here, Yibo whispered, as if in disbelief. Didn't I promise? Xiao Zhan said softly. Yibo's smile was small but real. You didn't say it. I didn't have to. The rain softened, fading into the night, but something about that silence stayed with them. It wasn't about romance or labels. It was about something far deeper, connection, trust, the kind of bond that exists even when nothing is said aloud. Later, when the project wrapped, their goodbye on set was brief. A quiet handshake, a shared look, a silent acknowledgement that this wasn't an ending, just a pause. Months later, during a live event, the host playfully asked both of them to describe each other in one word. Xiao Zhan paused, thoughtful, then said, stillness. The audience laughed softly, not understanding. Then Wang Yibo smiled, that slow, rare smile that only appeared when he meant it, and replied, echo. The crowd clapped, oblivious to the meaning behind it. But to them it was everything. Stillness and echo. One silent, one resonating, together creating harmony without ever needing words. Fans would replay that clip countless times, analyzing their expressions, the faint warmth in their eyes. But those who truly felt the story knew. This was silence speaking again, the continuation of a love language built not on speech, but on understanding. And even as the years went by, whenever they crossed paths, at an award show, in a backstage corridor, on a shared screen again, there was always that same hush between them. The same gentle recognition that some connections never fade, they just grow quieter, deeper. For Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo, silence was never emptiness. It was where love found its voice. Because sometimes love doesn't roar. It whispers, doesn't demand, wait. And when it finally speaks, it doesn't need words at all. Their story remains timeless, not because of what they said, but because of everything they didn't. Dizzy, if this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to